Hello and welcome to Roni Programs. In this series, we're going to be building Pokemon Red in React. Sounds hard. I think it's going to be hard, but I think it's also going to be a lot of fun. So just to sort of get us going on this journey, I've crafted a couple of what you might call user stories, and I think this is going to help me to stay focused and to sort of build the simplest thing that could possibly work as we go through this journey together. So this is kind of also meant to be a follow along / extend to your heart's content. So you can follow along in this video if you're interested. Of course, you can take what we're doing and run in your own direction with it. All the code is yours to use, anything you see here. With that, let's get started. So the first story I sort of had identified was just the basic start screen. I want to see what game I'm playing when the app loads. So I'll just kind of be figuring this out as I go, but let's mark this in orange just so that we know we're kind of working on this. And just to give you a sense of what I'm talking about, I have the current world record pulled up for Pokemon Red. And this screen right here, this screen that just, tells you what game you're playing, that's the first thing we're going to build. And when I say we're going to build this, I mean we're going to build the simplest possible version of this. We're not going to worry about things like styling. We're just going to be focusing on getting this thing to work. So we have a sort of empty React app that we're going to be starting with. And so let's read again the acceptance criteria. When I load the app, I should see the start screen, and it shows the heading Pokemon and the subheading Red version. Okay. So one thing I didn't mention that I think is important to mention is as we go through this series, we're going to be trying to do as much as we can in the style of TDD. So if you are into that kind of thing, I think you're going to enjoy this. And if not, if you've never done TDD, you might learn something. And again, if this isn't your approach and you just want to code, you can kind of skip through the testing parts. That's totally up to you. Okay, so the first test we want to write shows the start screen on load. By the way, I don't have a fancy mic. I'm just talking into a Mac and typing on it. I apologize if the keyboard is a little loud. Hopefully it's not too bad. There's really, not much I can do about it. But we're here to have fun, so hopefully that's not too much of a distraction. Okay, so shows the start screen on load. So on load, we can sort of translate into rendering our app. So that's going to be the first part of our test. And then what do we expect to happen? On the screen, we want to find a heading. And I'm moving a little fast here. Not really going to explain like testing library and how it works, but just I'll try to explain at a high level what the test is doing as I'm writing out these assertions and these blocks of code. So, I want to find the heading Pokemon, and actually let's use the little accent there, and I expect that to be in the document. So this is the first part of our test. Let's just get this passing. I guess technically there's another assertion we want to make, which is that we see red version as well. So now that we have our test written, let's go ahead and run it. And of course, we should expect it to fail. So here we are. Our app is rendered in React testing library, and it says unable to find accessible element role heading name Pokemon. That's right, because we haven't actually built anything yet. So the first thing we're going to do is just create this start page or this start screen. So normally I don't want to think ahead too much in terms of like design. I sort of want to keep things simple and build more complexity as we need it. But I am just going to go ahead and start by making this a new component. Nothing too fancy, just have a components directory, start screen. I meant to call that components. And here we're going to have a new functional component. It's really hard to talk and code at the same time. I'm not super experienced with this. Maybe that'll get easier with time. So let's not return anything. And actually, in fact, let's return just a stub, start screen stub, just to let us know that our screen is actually rendering in our test. So right now we still render app. And now we're going to come in here and say we're going to render instead the start screen. Okay, cool. So now we see that our stub is actually being rendered, but we're not actually showing anything, or anything useful at least. So let's go ahead and fulfill the first part of our test, which is we want to see the Pokemon heading. So here we create a new heading, and that assertion should now pass, which it looks like it did go over the first assertion, so that's great. And now it's saying I can't find red version. Okay, let's go ahead and satisfy that. We'll create a subheading, red version. And we have passing our first passing test. Fantastic. And really at this point, our feature's done. It's been TDD'd. Notice we didn't even look in the React app. We will, but I just kind of want to give you a feel for how this series is going to go. We're going to be spending a lot of time looking at the test, running the test, spending time in the editor, and trying to do a lot of our debugging here. And I think you'll find that a lot of times this is a way to work a little bit more quickly than making code changes, going back to Chrome, making code changes, going back to Chrome. And I don't have the, as you can see, or maybe you can't see, but I don't have the luxury of having a super wide screen. So putting things side by side isn't super feasible here. But we will check in the browser just to make sure things are actually working like the test said they should. So now we actually are going to swing over to our magical Chrome browser and see our app. Okay, great. It fulfills the acceptance criteria. I see the start screen with those headings when the app loads. So with that, we can go ahead and, well, first let's commit our changes. So we're going to say feature start screen. We'll commit that. Our first feature has been committed. We can mark this story as done. Awesome. Okay, so I'll try to get through these 3 stories. I tried to keep them small enough that I could fit it all into one video. You'll notice a number, by the way. This is just kind of like my sense of like, what's the complexity of this relative to, so like a 1 would be about the amount of time we spent just creating that start screen. You can see the main menu I've sort of estimated at 3. We'll talk about why. If you're familiar with pointing stories, I use Fibonacci numbers, so 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, just to kind of gauge complexity for how, just for the, like the relative level of complexity compared to like a known task. Like a 1 you could consider like, I know how long a 1 is going to take me, 5 minutes, something like that. So main menu, when I hit the A button from the start screen, I see the main menu and I see a button labeled New Game. Okay, so there's a little bit of hidden complexity in the acceptance criteria here, and we'll talk about why I gave it a 3, and we'll talk about the hidden complexity. But first, I just want to make it perfectly clear what we're doing. When we're on this screen right here, when we hit the A button, which we're using a keyboard, so we're gonna basically just pick a key and say that's the A button. When we're on this screen and we hit the A button, whatever key that is, that brings us to this screen right here. And we have a button that allows us to start a new game. The button doesn't have to do anything. we just have to see this main menu, which for now will just consist of the new game button. So hidden complexity. So first of all, there's creating this main menu component. That's pretty simple. The first bit of hidden complexity is right now in the app, all we're doing is showing the start screen. We don't have anything around keyboard events, anything like that. So we're going to have to kind of implement a very basic keyboard listening system to get us through to the next screen. The other bit of complexity is that, thinking about the way our app is structured, there's the start screen and then there's the main menu. These are kind of two separate views. And so we're going to have some, primitive notion of routing. So the fact that we have a new page, some kind of, keyboard event system we have to create, and some kind of basic routing system, that's kind of the reason why I decided, this was a reasonably complex story. So I decided to give it a 3. Let's go ahead and say that we're starting this one. So first bit of the acceptance criteria. When I hit the A button from the start screen, I see the main menu and I see a button labeled New Game. Okay, so now we can translate that acceptance criteria into a test. So shows main menu when the A button is pressed. Cool. So we'll start just by kind of, I want to kind of get the test down first, get it passing, and then we'll worry about refactoring. So the first thing that we're going to, of course, do is render the app just like we did with our first test. But now it's going to be a little different. We're going to, we want to hit the A button. And so we have to think about sort of what's happening at the user level. So the user is just using the keyboard. Yeah, it is really hard to code and talk at the same time. So as far as the user is concerned, they're just using a keyboard. So we're going to use the user event library and simulate what a user would be doing. So when I play on an emulator, I'll usually use Z as the A button. Z is A, X is B. That's just what I'm familiar with. So let's go ahead and say that Z is going to be the A button. So the user is going to hit Z, the A button. Again, we'll kind of, as time goes on, we'll refactor. We'll make this a little bit more readable because right now it is a little confusing as to why I'm hitting Z when the test says the A button. We'll get to that later, but I want to figure out, scope out exactly what the test is doing. So the user's hitting the Z key. And then what do we expect to happen? Well, I think the first thing we should do is make sure that the old view is not seen anymore. So in other words, we don't want to see the Pokemon Red version headings anymore. So let's just check that the Pokemon heading isn't there anymore. That would be kind of the first step. And actually, since this is not in the document, we need to use query by. The next thing we should see is a button, and that has a label of New Game. We expect that to be in the document. And so let's kind of go back to our acceptance criteria and make sure that the test matches what it says. So when I hit the A button from the start screen, I see the main menu and I see a button labeled New Game. So we know that we're on the start screen because this test proves it when we render the app. And I hit the A button and I don't see the start screen anymore. And I do see the New Game button. So I think this test is good to go. So let's figure out what we need to do. So we can see our test is failing because we're hitting Z, but nothing's happening. So when it says I shouldn't see the Pokemon heading, but I still do. So that's why our test is failing. Cool. So I guess the first thing we can do is create what should we do first? I think the first thing we should do, just for like the sake of like kind of chunking this up, is create our main menu component. And we'll just keep this super simple like our start screen component was. We're going to create a function component, and we're just going to return kind of a stub. Cool. Awesome. So obviously that doesn't affect our tests in any way, but now kind of in the back of our minds we say, okay, when I'm ready to show the main menu, I have a component that will show it. It doesn't actually show what we need it to, but that's fine. So I'm trying to think of like logically what makes sense to do next. So I think what makes sense to do next is to set up a basic routing system rather than worry about the keyboard navigation, because the keyboard navigation, it's going to be a little bit trickier to kind of debug, but we can be fairly confident that our routing system is going to work correctly, just from looking at the code and saying, you know, that looks reasonable. I didn't word that very well, but I guess what I'm trying to say is let's go ahead and make a simple router. So let me back up. There are two views in our app right now. So let's create an enum just called view. We have our start screen, and we have our main menu. And our app is going to sort of have the notion of the current view. And we're going to start on the start screen. Cool. So we haven't changed anything yet, but we've just kind of set up this notion of, okay, there's a view, there's a current view. Now what we want to do is render either the start screen or the main menu based on the current view that we're in. So we should be able to kind of work on this and keep our test passing. And so the first thing I want to do is create a new helper component. Maybe just something super simple like we can even just call it view outlet. So this is just going to be a component that takes a view, one of the views we've defined, and based on that view, it's going to return either the start screen or the main menu. So the first thing we'll do is just straight up return the start screen regardless of the view. We'll pass the current view because TypeScript will yell at us otherwise, but right now we're not actually using it. And our first test is still passing. That's great. So now what we can do is we can actually, depending on the view, return a different component. So in the case of the start screen, we want to return the start screen. And in the case of the main menu, we want to return the main menu. Okay, so I guess what I was trying to say before was conceptually, this is pretty clear. We have the notion of a current view. Depending on that current view, we render a different component. We can't quite, we could have extracted this out and written a unit test and everything, but I want to keep our tests at, the integration level, just to make sure that all the code paths are getting executed as they would in the real app. And so, so now we're reasonably confident at this point that our view outlet, we look at it and we say, yeah, that looks good. But now we can actually start writing the keyboard listening code, and that's going to prove that our view outlet is working correctly. And so what I'm going to do now, just because our test is passing, I'm going to go ahead and stage the changes so that if for some reason our test starts failing, there's an easy way to revert back to a time when it was passing. And you'll see me do this. I'll stage changes when tests are passing, just so I can easily revert back without losing a whole bunch of progress. Cool. So the next thing we're going to do is, let's go back to our test. and we need to handle this keyboard event. The user hits the Z key, the A button, however you want to think of it. So just thinking about it for a minute, I think what makes sense is to have a component that takes care of this sort of key listening logic for us, and we just pass it sort of an event handler. So I say, hey component, when you get a key down event, run this method. And so we'll keep things in the same file just so you can see all the code at once. It's possible I'll refactor some of this stuff, move it to different files, but I just want to give you a bird's eye view of everything at once. So maybe bird's eye view isn't the right word, but so that you can see all the code at once. So let's create a keyboard. Yeah, we'll just call it a keyboard listener. So this is a function component because we love function components. So this is going to be a pretty simple component. All it's going to do is render the children, which I think I have to wrap this in a fragment. I'm not sure. No, I guess not. Okay, I can just return children. But what I want to do in here is use an effect. What effect do I want to use? Well, I want to actually add an event listener to key down. So on the window, when the window registers a key down event, I want to run some code. What code do I want to run? Let's just call it on key down, and that's going to be a prop that our function component takes in. So I don't think that there's a, let's see, is there a keyboard? There's a React keyboard event handler, but there's not one for like the native DOM events as far as I know. So let's just make keyboard event handler, takes a keyboard event and returns nothing. Cool. We could have done an anonymous type, but I think it's just a little bit nicer to do it that way. So now we have this on key down prop that will be provided to us by the whatever's rendering this thing, and we're going to add that event listener. And of course, we want to clean up when this component gets unmounted. So we can go ahead and what are we going to do here? We're going to remove the event listener. And remove the on key down event listener when this component unmounts. Awesome. Okay, so here's a thought I just had. The keyboard listener isn't relevant. Well, let me think about this. I wonder if the start screen, what I'm thinking is I was going to originally have the app render the keyboard listener, but I'm wondering if it makes sense for the start screen to render a keyboard listener, and then the main menu could render its own keyboard listener, so that the logic to handle it is not the app's responsibility. So for example, if I render the keyboard listener in the app, then the app has to know how to handle that key press event. But really, that should be the start screen's responsibility, because the start screen is what's going to. I'm thinking about it. I'm not sure what the best way to be. Maybe it does make sense right now for the app to handle it just in the interim, and I can think about a better design later. Let's go with the initial thought, just because I think it's a little bit simpler. So we're going to have the app render the keyboard listener and handle the key down event. And offline or on separate time, I can think of maybe if there's a better design. For this series, I want to keep things simple enough that I can try to think about things on the fly. Get something working that's simple, easy to follow, and then if we need to abstract or need to refactor to improve maintainability, we can do that as well. Okay, so as I said, the app is going to render the keyboard listener, whoops, and be responsible for whatever key events happen. So let's create a handle key down callback, and we're going to pass that as the on key down prop. It's going to take an event. Oh, and guess what? We can use our keyboard event handler type that we created. That's great. Gotta love TypeScript. And for now we can just maybe we can just log the event and say, got key e dot. It's not e, it's event. Let's not be lazy. Okay, cool. And what's okay, I thought so. Yeah, we do need to wrap this in a fragment. And we need to actually use interpolation. There we go. Okay, cool. Awesome. So now we can see that we're printing got key Z, which means that our keyboard listener is working. That's great. First try. Yay us. Okay, so let's go ahead. Our first test is passing, so I'm gonna go ahead and stage changes. Even though we're in this kind of working state, I still like to stage. We can always come back and remove the code we don't need, do this refactoring, but I always want to have an easy way to come back if I make a change and the tests start failing. The test that I think, that should be passing, if they start failing, I like to have a one-click way to get back to a clean state and not have to undo and figure out when do I need to stop undoing. And I don't want to lose all the progress I've made up to that point either. Anyways, long story. Let's finish out this feature. We're almost done, actually. This is a 3-pointer and we're almost done. But you can see the complexity here, right? We've got a view outlet, we've got this keyboard listener. We're handling, regardless of the implementation, we're handling these details of listening to the keyboard, rendering the view based on, kind of the state of the app we're in. So this is kind of the complexity that was sort of hidden in the initial acceptance criteria, but we teased it out when we kind of were estimating it. And this is good. We're almost done. Okay, so got key Z, that's great. So now, and again, we're keeping it super simple. We can refactor later. So if the key is Z, the A button, we're going to set the current view to the main menu. Fingers crossed, passing test. That's right, we still have one more thing to do, which is actually implement the main menu. The acceptance criteria said this is just a button, and that button just has just says new game. Ta-da! Shows main menu when A button is pressed. And that is another TDD feature. That's great. Let's just take a quick second to figure out if there's anything simple we can refactor. One thing I noticed we can do is if we're rendering the app for each test, which we probably will be, since the app doesn't take any props, we're just going to be rendering that for each test. So let's kind of extract that out into before each. Run the tests again, make sure they pass. They're passing. We'll stage changes. Awesome. This is great. Okay, so this sort of keyboard to Z, is that something I want to tackle now? I don't have a great idea yet for how to model the abstraction of the keyboard mapping to buttons in the game, or like for the original Game Boy, let's say. So I'm gonna hold off on that. I think it's important as we go through this to keep in mind when we don't have enough information to make a design decision. Sometimes these decisions will emerge naturally as we for example, handle more button presses. We'll start to see patterns emerge. We'll figure out, okay, this kind of API would be really nice and it would fit all my use cases. That's kind of what we're looking for here. Awesome. Okay, so we're not going to handle this sort of keyboard event to controller mapping yet. We talked about how perhaps in the future the different menus um, will render the keyboard listener. The thing that's tricky about that is that now there needs to be a way for each component to change the current view, and that's fine. We could do it, but it would either mean passing down this set current view somehow as a prop to each of the components in the view outlet, or it would mean creating a provider. Again, we want to avoid complexity for as long as we can. So the simplest thing that works is that the app, you can think of the app as now a very simple controller that will show the main menu when the A button is pressed. So I'm not too worried about that for right now. Our view outlet is pretty simple. Our keyboard listener, there's really not much. You can't get a whole lot more simpler than that. We could move this to a new file. I'm not going to waste your time with that. Let's say this feature is good. So this is a new feature, and it's what did we call it? Just main menu. Feature main menu. And we can mark a 3-pointer as done. Awesome. Okay, so the last sort of small story. I have no idea how long we've been going, by the way, but the last thing I want to do is this sort of the first part of the new game sequence. So I'm at the main menu. I hit the A button. Well, he goes through some options, and then I see this "Hello there, welcome to the world of Pokemon" text. This is the last feature we're gonna do today. So let's go ahead and we'll mark that in progress. I almost forgot. Let's come back to our app. Again, sometimes you'll see this, like I'll be like, okay, the feature's working. I'll forget to actually run it in the app because that's how confident I am. When you TDD and you have tools, like React Testing Library, User Event, they're awesome tools. I'm that confident that this is going to work, right? And it's going to be funny if this doesn't, but I'm here at the main menu. You won't see it, but I'm hitting the Z key, boom, new game. The level of confidence I have when doing TDD in this way means that a lot of times I just kind of forget to check it in the app. Like I'm, 99% confident that it's going to work because, user event, render screen, like these are very closely simulating the real browser. So anyways, just a small tangent. Okay, we've seen these two features work in the app, in the browser. That's great. So final. When I hit the A button from the main menu, let's make our lives easier and actually just kind of bring this over here as a comment so that we can see it as we're writing our test. So initializes new game sequence. Yeah. Right? That's the story name. Okay, so initializes new game sequence. So the first thing I'll need to do is I need to hit A to, I almost thought about commenting, but that seems a little silly. Maybe it's worth commenting just for now, just to sort of show what's going on. So the first is, go to main menu. We'll keep our actions together. I don't love comments, and a lot of times you'll see me, maybe put a comment here just to explain what I'm thinking, but end up removing them and create an abstraction that conveys the same intent without the comment. I just think comments are horrendous when misused, so we're going to try to keep our code comment free and use good abstractions to convey the meanings that our comments would otherwise convey. So first we go to the main menu, then we, it's weird, right? We've got a button, but we're doing key handling, just start new game. Because I almost said click new game button, like we're not clicking, I don't know if a button was the best choice if we're mainly using the keyboard. What would be awesome is to build this game so that you could either click the buttons or use the keyboard. I think maybe to start we'll just keep it keyboard. I don't know. I literally have not thought any farther ahead than like these simple 3 features. So we'll figure it out as we go. So when I hit the A button from the main menu, so that's this part, I see, hello there, welcome to the world of Pokemon. Okay, cool. Again, just to keep it simple, we are not going to worry about, I like to, this is funny, but I like to, you know what, there was a simpler way of doing this. It's too late now. I should have just done 2 lowercase, yes. Yes, coding and talking at the same time is hard. Okay, so what I was trying to say was I don't want to create a lot of complexity here to start with the, like you'll notice in, you know, the real version, the text will sort of scroll as it's coming. We're not going to worry about that right now, right? We're going to handle kind of animating the text sequences later. We just care that when we start a new game, we see this text. We could also just kind of do a check to see that we expect the new game button not to be in the document. Once we've started a new game, we'll add that check here. Like I said, I don't love the comments here. Obviously, the test is a little harder to read without them, but we're going to figure out a nice way to convey that intent. And it's good motivation because with comments, there's it's more acceptable to write crappier code, sloppier code, but this is going to drive me crazy. So it'll give me good motivation to come back and fix it. Okay, great. So our test is failing. If you're ever writing a test and it passes and you're like, okay, my test is done, it passes, great, you should stop and think, wait, I didn't actually build anything. And that's why TDD is awesome, because you're proving that the code you wrote makes the test pass, makes the feature work. And as long as your test closely resembles the way a real user would actually use your feature, that's how you can be confident without even looking in the browser to make sure that things are working as expected. I'll try to remember to come back to the browser because a lot of times I just forget. Great. So right now it's failing because it found the game button, which actually, by the way, this needs to be query by. It found the game button and it shouldn't be there because we're starting a new game. So let's go back to our app and let's go ahead and stage our test because our test is written correctly. At least we think it is. Sometimes you write a test and there's a bug. That's okay. You just fix the test. And you'll know that it's a bug in the test because you're 99% sure your code is correct and your test is failing. Anyways, okay, so now we've got a third view, which is the kind of new game. I don't know what you want to call it, but we're just going to keep it simple and call it new game. It's not a very good name because there's so much going on in this kind of new game sequence. Again, we're keeping it simple. We'll return a stub for now. Only to find out at the end that when we're ready to check our test, that we haven't implemented it yet, but that's fine. Just like with the main menu. And yeah, we've got a new view, so let's add it here. And you can see, like, as we kind of work and add new features, we'll start to see which parts of the code get unwieldy. So like you can kind of see that like doing everything in this one file is not going to be maintainable as we have more and more views. So it's a good signal to us when that starts to happen that we need to clean things up. I love TypeScript's exhaustive case checking. It's letting us know that, hey, there's a code path that's not returning a React node. So in the case of a new game, we're going to return new game. Gotta love it. Of course, nothing's going to happen because there's no way that we are actually getting to the new game at this point. So now we're sort of at this interesting point, because right now the keyboard sort of handler is setting the current view to the main menu regardless of what view we're in. So this is not going to be clean, but from a TDD perspective, we're just going to be thinking about what's the simplest change we can make that's going to get our test to pass. And once that happens, we can start working on refactoring our code. So if the key is Z, we're going to do something different based on the view we're in. So depending on the current view, if the current view is the start screen, we're going to show the main menu. Yes. And I wonder if there's, do I have a lint rule for getting a break? Okay, good. Yes, the lint rule is on, letting me know that there's a fall through. That's awesome. I really appreciate ESLint. And so before I say this, I just want to talk about what should happen. Our first two tests should continue passing, and the reason is because we've done a refactor. It wasn't exactly a simple refactor, but the code itself did not get that much more complicated. Like, we structured it in a different way, but yes, I'll just go ahead and run the tests. Make sure that the first two still pass. Awesome. Okay, so like I said, we're in this working state, but our tests are passing and we're getting somewhere. So I'm going to stage so that if I screw up, we have an easy way to revert. And it would be disingenuous to fake a mistake, but I am looking forward to making a mistake, having a test fail, and just kind of like being able to do that one click. Okay, let's restore back to a state. Let's try again. Working in these really small incremental phases keeps us safe, keeps the test passing. It's a good time. So now we need to handle the case where if we're in the main menu, then we need to go to the new game screen. I almost said it. Now, if we save this, our test won't pass, but we should see that new game stub, which is what we want. Awesome, we do. And finally in here, we're just gonna render, let's just do a p tag. What was that text we wanted? This was the text. There you go. Our third feature, TDD'd, starting a new game. Let's prove it works in the browser. I'm here at the start screen. I'm gonna hit the A button. I see the new game button. Note that clicking on it doesn't do anything. We haven't bound anything to the click, which again makes me think that this button is not a good idea if we're not gonna support clicking it. We'll figure it out. I'm gonna hit the Z key again, and I see the new game, sort of, at least the start of the new game sequence. So we can go ahead and mark this as done. We can commit our feature, initialize new game sequence. Is that what we called it? Initialize new game sequence? Okay. Commit. Awesome. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for joining, for watching, for being a part of this. I'm not going to spend any time refactoring on camera. If I do any refactoring, I'll keep it super simple. I thought about, I don't know exactly how refactoring is going to work, because sometimes that's more like where you're doing a lot more deep thinking. It's kind of like trying things, realizing that's not going to work. I don't think that'd be very interesting to watch. So I'll find the right balance of refactoring on camera versus off camera, and I can always cover some of the changes that have been made since. But that's going to be it for today's video. Thanks so much for watching. In the next video, I'll have a couple stories prepped just like I did for this one, talk about what we're going to be implementing, and yeah, using TDD to build it and give us enough confidence that we don't even need to check that it's working in the browser. We will, but yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.